Welcome to Tech Talent Today, where IT leaders share their tough challenges, creative solutions, and latest insights. You'll discover fresh ideas and inspiration here with your host, IT staffing veteran and president of Claremont Technologies, Jody Kulik-Mayer. And now, here's Jody.
Today, we have a remarkable guest joining us. He's a true advocate for diversity and inclusion in the corporate world. Meet Egwu Nwankpah, the head of supplier diversity at Cushman and Wakefield. In his role, Egwu plays a vital part in establishing and maintaining the global supplier diversity strategy, bridging the procurement function, and the diversity, equity, and inclusion team. With over 21 years of experience in areas like internal audit, advisory services, and supplier diversity, Egwu is a recognized expert in the field. Before Cushman and Wakefield, Egwu held key positions at Bank of America and Deloitte & Touche. He boasts an impressive educational background with a Bachelor of Business Administration from Andrews University, where he graduated as a member of the prestigious J.N. Andrews Honors Program, and an MBA from R.H. Smith School of Business at the University of Maryland. Outside of work, Egwu is active in civic and church activities, a passionate sports enthusiast, and cherishes quality time with his wife and 3 daughters. Welcome, Egwu. So nice for you to be here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you.
Well, first, I want to congratulate you. I've seen that you've been recognized in Diversity Plus magazine for 2023 Top 25 Diversity Change Leaders. So how did that come about?
Hey, I don't know. Somebody nominated me. There was hundreds of nominees, and I'm grateful to be selected. That our story resonated, and I was able to make it top 25. It's a really distinguished group of people, so I don't take it lightly getting the nomination or being selected for top 25.
Wonderful. I'm going to put a link in the show notes so people can see the article and the portion on you. So,
all right.
Great.
Perfect.
I also wanted to mention that you'll be speaking at the ACI National Summit on ESG in New York City, October 11th and 12th.
Yes.
You're going to speak on establishing and maintaining the global supplier diversity strategy, promoting utilization of diverse suppliers globally to stakeholders. That is a mouthful.
Yeah, so yeah, it is long. I'm a pretty long time. I didn't write the title either. Let me just take you since we're putting disclaimers out there. ESG, responsible sourcing, supplier diversity are all now synonymous with each other. You actually see a lot of, some of my peers in other organizations and other industries only say they are like the head of responsible sourcing, because that's including supplier diversity, right? So there's a lot of emphasis on supplier diversity. There's a lot of strategies now going into different businesses on how they can position themselves with supplier diversity, both as a client or as a company, as a patron. It's definitely a hot topic around the world, really. Even I was in London a few months ago speaking on a panel with large organizations, and we were all talking about ESG, responsible sourcing, and supply diversity, and how the companies are focusing on that as ways to really give back and invest in their own communities and increase their profitability, really. Because what happens with supplier diversity, you find that as people make these wholesale investments in supplier diversity, they actually become more profitable.
Wow. So that's like one of the benefits, because like corporations, I guess, I don't know if they would do it out of the goodness of their heart.
Well, and that's that. I'm glad you said that, because that's one of the myths, really, that supplier diversity is a charity thing. It really is not. It drives revenue, right? Especially with us and what we do. Our clients have high expectations on what we should do, and we have to meet those expectations, right? When you think about commercial real estate, it's one of the larger spend items that any company has, right? Under salaries and things like that, it's going to be how much you're spending on space, right? And maintaining those spaces and things like that. So we are a vital part of our clients' supply chain. So we have to make sure that, we're responsibly sourcing the responsibility of that supply chain out.
So, I guess, what are some of the benefits you're seeing from using diverse suppliers?
Well, diverse suppliers so it's one of those things where let's think about a situation, right, where you have I have a client that's in 6 states, right? I could hire a big company that have offices in New Jersey, and that company then fly to those 6 different places, right? And give you a volume price, or I could invest in the businesses that do the same thing in the community where they're at, right? And a lot of times that's where supply diversity comes in, where you're able to get economies of scope, right? Where you're able to see that a particular need needs to be met in the community, and you're able to look for a supplier within the community. And the diverse suppliers are able to really push us into a situation where you're able to constantly reevaluate your needs, and you tend to get the most up to date, the newest, the most innovative suppliers that way, just because you're in the process of not just using the tried and true, the good old ones, but looking at the new innovative startups, small businesses, diverse firms.
I think, right, it's probably good all the way around because it keeps your current suppliers on their toes, right?
Sure.
Knowing you're looking at other suppliers and the latest and greatest and maybe nimble ones. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
that's, yeah, go ahead.
And that translates into not only savings for us, innovation and more profitability for across the industry. So I know the Hackett Institute does those surveys and that research, and they found it to be true that the increase of supplier diversity goes hand in hand with increased profitability.
Wonderful. So when we spoke, you said that, right, there are a lot of myths around like your function and what you do.
Mhm.
Um, so I guess maybe you could dispel like some of those myths. Like you mentioned, companies think you can get companies contracts, and like what are some of the myths and what's the real deal?
Yeah, so I think in supplier diversity, our role is as an advocate and as a finder, right? So we're connecting people. A lot of times, you know, if you saw my LinkedIn inbox, it's a bunch of solicitations saying this is what I can do, and um, can you connect me to the right place and stuff like that. Sometimes it's off the wall. Like I've got all sorts of people selling whatever, like I'm not buying hair extensions,
Right.
right? All right, or I'm not buying acrylic nails, but I do get those offers,
Right.
in my inbox also, right? So but I think when you really, the savvy people are more so understanding the supply chain of a company, right? Before this, I was in banking, and now that I'm in commercial real estate, similar needs, similar but not the same. Um, but, but but when you think about what that supply chain is, I think companies need to be more pointed. Um, and there's a lot of industries that become very saturated, right? I can't tell you how many, contingent labor staffing agencies contacted me every day, 2 a day at least. So it's at least 1,000 a year
Wow.
that reach out to me, right? That just shows how much that industry has been saturated over the last 20, 30 years. So it's a delicate dance where we have certain needs that we need, right? Every company does, and we have to kind of weed through everything to find those.
Right. And right, as you know, we are contingent staffing labor and also we bank certified a woman-owned business. So right,
Sure.
it is challenging for us because it is such a saturated market. But
Very saturated.
yeah, yeah. So how do you think someone could break through that saturation? Is it just through relationships or, do you have a thought on that?
Well, I think so. So there's just two ways. The riches are in the niches. I've always been told that. So I think a lot of staffing agencies want to be as broad as they can. So they say their IT staffing and things like that, which kind of allow them different ways to, get in, and IT is pretty profitable from a staffing standpoint, right? But I think is honing in really on the industry, right? So what are the type of needs that a commercial real estate company might need that has occupier services? So I don't know, maybe a staffing agency that staffs maintenance and janitorial, right? And has, is the supporting, place for, we have large clients in certain areas. So, if you have sickness, you have a downturn, you have anything, we're going to supply you with emergency staffing for that, right? That would be interesting, right? That would be a nice staff augmentation that we could use. But a lot of times people say, we have programmers and stuff like that, and that's not really where we're looking for um, people in a pinch, right? So I think it's more so the riches are in the niches for IT staffing. So when you find kind of that niche need, stick with it and kind of develop yourself as the pro in that
That
niche.
is great advice. Now, since so many vendors come to you, do you go out and find vendors? Like, do you still
Sure.
feel the need? So, where do you go to find your vendors?
Well, I'm very active in obviously all the councils, RPOs that are related to supplier diversity. Uh, we make quite a few connections and additions to our supply chain every year. So I don't want people to think like, we're not there. All right, no, we're adding hundreds of diverse suppliers every year, right?
Wow, hundreds.
Hundreds, because just think about the nature of what we do as a business, right? We do everything from occupier services, where we manage business, to asset services, where we're managing large assets for wealthy individuals and trusts and corporations. And then we have our CW services, which is building maintenance, janitorial, supply, all of that stuff. And then you have our brokerage business, and that's not even all. We have more, right? So when we think about all the different things we do, we're in so many communities. The Cushman and Wakefield. A lot of people say, what? I think I heard it, and they see they see our logo, and now when you go around your community, you kind of see it everywhere because we're in a lot of different places and we're in a lot of different communities. So with that as an example, you know, we get new clients, we employ people in new communities, right? And that circle has, multiplies the amount of diverse suppliers that we add on.
Right. So when you go to these groups like NMSDC or WeBank,
Sure.
how do you screen, or like how do you meet the vendors? How do you decide who you're going to work with?
Well, we have needs that we know. My team has needs that we go to each conference with. So it's not just even though I get meeting requests from people who make custom candy and stuff like that. We do have specific needs that we're looking for diverse suppliers on different accounts, and we're going there specifically to find that. Now, it's not always easy to find a land surveyor in Wyoming that's diverse, but we do. We look for that, or we might look for window washers in San Francisco, right? A window washing company that can handle, football stadiums worth of glass if you kind of measure it, right? So I think all of those things are in our purview, and we look for, and it changes from conference to conference.
And do you go to these groups because of their screening process?
It's a good question. Certifications are big, very big. I think we go to those groups. They're great partners. Our partnerships with NMSDC and WeBank, have been better on the development side, right? Where we, can push some of our suppliers to in that direction so they can be developed and understand kind of what it is to be with big corporations and develop their book of business also, right? Because, the goal of people is not just to be our supplier. They want to be suppliers to many, right? So I think that helps us more on the development side. But also when we see the sample of approval or the certification from those agencies, it's definitely something that catches our eyes and makes us understand that you have the competence for us to move quickly on the contract. Right. So I think that's the benefit.
Right. And their certifications are rigorous. I've
Very.
gone through it, and every year you must be recertified. Also vigorous, since I personally went through them. Yeah.
It is. Those certifications are very similar to the procurement processes you go through at a Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000 company, right? There's the same thing that they're going to ask you for, right? So I think a lot of times those certifications are just preparation for you to work with a major company.
Well, because you said also like the development. I guess you're saying those groups also help, corporations, like these individual companies grow and develop. Is that?
Yes, development, peer opportunities also, right? Where you get to talk to peers in your industry, kind of see what their pitfalls were, things that made them successful, help you along your journey. And sometimes, access to capital is first, broached in organizations like that. So a lot of the companies that do financing, a lot of the banks are very interested in people who are certified in those companies to help them along their journey financially.
Right. And do you also work with companies that are not part of a group, like certified?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We do because sometimes it makes sense for a local certification rather than a big certification, right? Because we have, say, we're dealing with a dry cleaner in Chicago that does uniforms for one of our locations. Doesn't really make sense for them to certify, right?
Right.
At a large level, but the certification at the city or the state level is fine there, where it just identifies that they are who they say they are, and then we're accounting for our spend in the right way. But sometimes those national certifications are really for people who are trying to win cross-state business with large Fortune 500 to Fortune 1000 companies.
Great. So when you started at Cushman and Wakefield, I guess you started during the pandemic, right?
Yes, I did.
So I guess where were they in their journey, their DEI journey when you started, and also how was it to start during the pandemic?
Well, interesting, I would say. I did all of my interviews like this,
Right.
right? Interesting enough, one of the things with tech problems that you might have, so a few of my interviews, like the tech cut out. One of them, my computer was unplugged and it died. I had to dial back in on my phone. And so there's a different feel when you interview in person than remotely. I think remotely you actually have an advantage as the interviewee because you have just everything at your disposal still, right? And you can really set the table. So I was able to use, the technology to show things. I was able to pull something up and say this and share my screen and do all the other stuff that in an interview we might be shuffling around for paper and all the things that you can't do. I think it's a better thing. So it was good in that aspect, but they had Cushman had just hired a chief diversity officer about 6 months before I started. Our chief procurement officer was about a year in at that point. So there's a lot of change that was going on, and the expectation was that I would continue that change and move some of the things very rapidly. And unfortunately, not just me, but my team and our team in general was very nimble, very apt to help me become successful in my job. And I had a lot of cheerleaders in high places, and I was able to move the ball efficiently and effectively very, very fast.
Right. So I guess what are some of the things that you've learned, like do's and don'ts during your time at Cushman?
Ooh, good point. Do's. Do not stop. Keep moving, right? So one of the things that, I've been shown over and over again. It's stopping is it takes more energy to stop than to keep going, right? Um, and um, in situations where I have kept moving, kept at it, keep pushing for things, we've had very great things happen, right? One of the things that happened during the pandemic is we moved ahead. We, as in everyone, moved ahead light years of technology,
Right.
right? There's many things like this. I'm sure. I don't know if you were doing this before the pandemic, but conversations like this started happening very often, right? And people who weren't used to it had to get used to it, right? And same thing internally, we had to move ahead in technology with our technology very fast, and not everyone's very comfortable with that. But being persistent and talking to people and pushing for things that would be helpful became, part of my MO and calling card. What not to do? Um,
Or lessons learned.
Well, lesson learned. One of the things that I get is, there's an adjustment every environment you come from and to go to, right? So there's different things in my former place that were okay as far as ways of conversation, ways of asking, and things like that. A structure of conversation, length of meetings, and things like that that I had to adjust a little bit when I came over here, right? And another thing was, it was an industry that I was somewhat knowledgeable about because of my former responsibilities, but there was a lot I had to learn, right? So, being able to constantly admit when I don't know something and move forward became very pivotal.
Right. Right. And did you also initiate like a senior management council where you can discuss the diversity? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, tell me about that.
So we one of the things that we put together early was our Supply Diversity Advisory Council, and that's co-chaired by myself and our CFO. And that, to me, has been very helpful because it keeps us grounded on what the viewpoint of the C-suite is, to the various, plights of diverse suppliers. And I say plight because, sometimes diverse suppliers, if you get feedback from them, they want more visibility, and they want more communications with people outside of just procurement, right? They want, senior leaders to understand the value that they're bringing and give them, some sort of feedback on how they can, grow. And with what we've done there with our buddy program, where we have a match with senior leaders that are applicable to the categories that we would get them through. We've really seen an understanding really of kind of what goes on in these businesses. Now, a lot of times when people see diverse businesses, they think, oh, this diverse business is it's a struggling business that's making a few thousand. No, some of these businesses are making hundreds of millions of dollars. However, they haven't been getting the amount of internal insight that they thought that would be beneficial to them. So that paired them up with that. And then another thing is, getting executives that normally would not be involved with these conferences and things we go to these conferences and understand and really see what we do every day. I think that has been very helpful for us moving the ball forward, because I think now everybody feels that they're a part of the success we have in supply diversity.
Right. And so just to step back to something you said. So the buddy program puts the suppliers with your like senior leaders. That's too,
Yes.
but wow, that's a great opportunity for
Yeah, it's a
this.
great opportunity for both, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
for senior, for it's growth for our senior leaders and it's growth for our suppliers, and we do that for our real top diverse suppliers, right? So they get that opportunity that they weren't getting before.
Right. And I'm sure when they learn this, they can service the company better, right?
Yeah, I mean, and the company can service them better as a supplier, right? So I think it's one thing for them to see a need and feel the need, but it's another thing for them to actually now get insight onto what we're doing and what our plans are, and them to actually be able to now focus on not just what's happening today, but what's happening down the road. So I think it's a win for everybody.
Absolutely. And right, I guess normally you wouldn't think like what the company can do for the suppliers, but it is really important because I do remember like in the 1990s, just in IT staffing, when large companies did not pay on a regular basis, they would put their suppliers out of business. So,
Sure.
right, it's really important to know you don't want to put your
Sure.
suppliers out of business. But
Yeah, no, that's what you don't want to do. And also I would say this, everything changes, right? If you were selling CDs in the 90s, you were doing very well,
right.
right?
Yes.
Right. If you had a CD store, it was, my goodness. I remember people used to wait out late night for certain CDs to come out.
Right.
Now it's streaming. So where's that business, right? So I think everybody needs to have an eye on the future. And I think the more connected and the more transactions you have and the more conversations you're able to have can get people really sober on what's actually happening. And I think that's important.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, this is somewhat related. I've been watching a lot of 1980s movies with my son, and that there's no cell phones in it or the way the computers look. Like it just shows the change of,
Yeah.
Oh,
well, my children refer to that as the olden days. uh, um, I heard them say, someone asked a question and they said, oh, I heard it happened in 1987. Like, what was life back then? And I'm like, I was in elementary school. I don't feel like it was that long ago.
The olden days.
Well, the olden days. So I, and with, I feel time is moving faster now than it was then, right?
Yes.
A lot of the stuff that we do now, we dreamed of being able to FaceTime somebody, right? It was the Jetsons.
Yes.
Then,
yeah.
Right? So I think a lot of stuff that's very regular now has, it was a thing of dreams then. So businesses have to adapt to that also. I talk a lot to businesses about the TikTok culture, and people start laughing until they understand what I'm saying. I said, one of the greatest inventions ever in the world was TikTok. Why? Not because people dance to that. That's not the point. The point is really that TikTok has figured out what the average attention span is in these 60, 90-second sound bites, right? And that's what people need to concentrate on rather than this long form. It's always telling when if we speak to some senior executives in certain companies that don't have the exposure. I think our executive team's pretty nimble with this actually, but I've seen a lot of executives say, they want to go out on the Super Bowl and spend $2 billion, right? Or something crazy, or millions of dollars per second or something like that. But some of these new executives are like, you know what? I could pay an influencer a fraction of that and reach more people because at halftime of the Super Bowl, I get up to go get something to eat.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's this thought pattern that is changing the way people are thinking about things. And I think like the TikTok culture now, like I call it, it's forcing people to rethink things in smaller sound bites, build large swaths of content to be able to cut down into those sound bites. Right. And then also as a supplier, right? What's the best way to get in front of people, right? Is it waiting outside their office like we used to?
Yeah.
Is it taking out a newspaper ad to say what I could do? Or is it creating some form of content that's going to catch them, right? So this is all the changes that businesses are being forced to make on both sides, both as a supplier and as a client.
That's true. Though, I mean, I think it's sort of sad that the attention span is so short to the TikTok bite, but that is what it is.
Sure.
But like, even like, right, my son who is 13 tells me for our, Claremont YouTube page, oh, you need more shorts, and the shorts get so many more views than the other videos. So it's like you need the younger generation.
The
to be
shorter,
telling you.
well, you know what? It's funny. We've always thought that way, right? If you, as an American, if I lose my passport overseas, right, and you go to like the embassy to get a new passport, they start asking you stuff that Americans would see in a commercial.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they'll say to you, um, melts in your mouth and not in your,
Wow.
right? And
Yeah.
you would get that as an American
Hands.
through what?
Right.
Through just sound
Hands.
bites,
Yeah, totally.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
we've always learned through sound bites,
Good point.
but I think that technology is just figuring it out, right? Technology has just made us understand how we learn, right?
Yes.
So I think that's going to be pivotal for businesses to understand sound bites, to understand different ways. I always wonder when, you get these too, where people come and they'll give you a full pitch on LinkedIn, like, hi, nice to meet you, 10 paragraphs, right? And it's like, it's not the best way, but that's the way business used to be. It used to be come with all your information. You got one chance, get it out. But now it's like, how can you catch my attention? How can you catch my eye? Right. And the shorter the message, the more succinct, the better the content, you win. Right. So it's a lesson that businesses learn.
That is a great lesson. And one that I'm always thinking about and struggling with. So appreciate
not
that.
really struggling. I think
Yeah.
you're pivoting, right? That's what everyone's doing, right?
Right.
So it's a pivot, which, like I said, I always say this to people, like, companies give you the blueprint, all of them, what we're gonna. They in every report that a company issues, they talk a little bit about the past and try to point you toward the future. This is what we're going to be investing our money in, right? Electric vehicles, right? It was just 5-6 years ago where people were like, I'm never going to go electric. I'm just going to, right?
Here we
Now
are.
things change, right? But companies have been telling you that's where it was going, right? They've been saying it, right? But, it's up to people to pick up on and take the report seriously.
Right. I know when we were talking offline, you said, people need to read the ESG reports of a company, but they are sort of dense. Like, do you think there's a key part to look at?
Yeah. So that's so funny. So I think companies are even getting better with that also, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's I say savvy companies make their ESG reports read like a magazine instead of a book. Wow, right? Think about that. Where it's like something where you can easily pick portions apart and what you want to read or what's applicable to you, and kind of take it like a magazine. You don't read a whole magazine from cover to cover, right?
Right.
But books, you feel bad when you don't read a book cover to cover, right? Because you feel like that's what it's supposed to do. I mean, I think we all have books we started and didn't finish, right? Right. But we all have magazines that we get and we can pick out what we like and what we need to understand and know. So I think that's the next generation of ESG reports, being that savvy and being increasing readability. But I would look carefully as to what your core strength is, right? Like, so, there's a good portion of our ESG reports talking about carbon and stuff like that. If that's not something you can deal with, then that's not an area of competency that you need to worry about. But there's other things where I think people can be of service and understand and see where it's going and kind of, read into those things and try to pivot into that arena.
Right. So how did you end up in like the DEI space? Because, you come from like a finance accounting background.
Yeah, that's a good question. A funny story. So, winter of 2013, I want to say February, maybe say March. My oldest daughter was about one, not even one yet. And so she was, all these things for the first time. I'd never seen, people teething, first steps, stuff like this was all new to me as a parent. So at that point, I was working in public accounting, and I was working till about 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, coming back home and then leaving again at 8. So I was barely, up so a day of the weekend I didn't work. I didn't have a lot of interaction with her other than the nanny would send videos, and those videos were the highlight of my day, right? Getting her on the swing set, getting her in the stroller, getting her eating lunch, or even taking a nap, right? Those were big things. So I get a video. I'm in a staffing meeting. I'll never get it. And I get a video of my daughter taking her first steps. I was devastated. I said, I can't do this anymore, right?
Yeah.
So I started looking for things that I could do that wouldn't be, I could use my finance background, but I wasn't going to be part of the finance cycle. I wasn't going to be part of the year-end audit. I wasn't going to be an audit anymore where I was making reports and working crazy hours. I just wanted to be able to use those skills and utilize them in another way. And luckily, when I went to when Bank of America started their conversation with me about a year before that, and we started looking at different positions, and I was able to take a position in what would become global procurement. At the time, it was called something else. And it was really looking at the issues and doing issues and thematic reviews of implementations and things like that in procurement, and looking at procurement policy and helping with that. And that was kind of the bridge into procurement, which ended up being my bridge into supplier diversity. So,
Wow.
So supplier diversity is still a procurement function, but it's definitely dotted line into DEI. So that's how that all happened for me. So I'm very happy that I don't. Well, sometimes I might work late, but it's not that consistent busy season in public accounting that is arduous, to say the least.
Right. And now you don't have to watch your daughter grow up on video. You could see her, you have 3 girls, so you could see them
I have
live.
3 of them. Yeah, I can see all of them. Sometimes they make me not want to be here now that they're getting older, right? They tell me I need, they're go get me this or that. But it's been great. I guess the silver lining of the pandemic was basically being here with them every day, eating together, playing. My daughters would bring me, like, they were going to school from home. They would bring me like a cookie. They say, you haven't opened up the door to your office in a long time. Or they knock on the door and they say, do you want something to drink and stuff like that? Or I need you to judge the fashion contest with my dolls. So you have to take 15 minutes away from working, no more work. And they pull me out of the office. So a lot of that was, great times that I would have missed if they were in school. So that was the silver lining for it. But definitely, change of position has brought me into different arenas, right? I think supplier diversity is, I'm half community activist, half corporate negotiator, right?
Yes.
And both of those put you in very different arenas. I win a lot of arguments when I'm on, when there's a financial situation. I say, well, I'm a CPA. So I get it. So they're like, oh, you are? Oh, yeah. Okay, I'm a CPA. Yeah. New York, Maryland, both licensed, California too. It's dormant, but it's still there. So I say, yeah, I'm a CPA, and win some arguments. But other than that, it's not good for anything but me doing my parents' taxes.
Right. It's good.
So.
Well, right. It gives you the cred in the corporate arena.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely now the CPA exam is a very hard exam. So you want to wear it for the rest of your life because even though it was 20 years ago, it was months of strife, and I was missing out on my early 20s preparing for that exam every 6 months, the different parts of it. So I don't miss it,
Right.
but I'll happily claim the moniker after my name.
Wonderful. Well, Egwu, this has been amazing. Do you have a parting thought?
Well, I guess my parting thought is for to suppliers out there. I think we have all been through some difficult times in the last few years, right? And you know, it's we've come out of it onto uneven ground, even still, right? Now we have inflation, we have everything's more expensive. Trust me. Go to the remember when you used to go and buy a 2 liter of ginger ale for 99 cents everywhere? Good luck getting it for under 250, right?
Right.
All right. So everything is much more expensive. Companies are being much more stringent in how they spend money. It feels like nothing is in your favor. However, it's time to out innovate the innovators, right? Take everything that you know today and realize you need to know more, right? And you will be fine. You will be fine.
Well, they should take the great advice that you gave here. Like, the riches are in the niches. That was a great one. Read the ESG report, see where they're going, see where you could help. So,
And understand sound bites.
right. And that's yes.
Understand sound bites. Sound bites is the communication language of today. So understanding that will make you a very wealthy person.
Love it. Love it. Egwu, this was so much fun. Thank you.
Yes, this is fun and easy. It's always a good time to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Tech Talent Today, brought to you by Clearmont Technologies IT Staffing and Search. You can find out more at clearmonttech.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and share. See you next time.